Okay, so we are doing today Membe's Amud Aleph, or at least part of Membe's Amud Aleph, and we are starting from Mem Aleph and Beis. We are at the two dots. So the Gemara tells us that Idmar Hiviu Lufneim Te'enim Va'anovim. So if somebody brought to you uh, figs and grapes, B'Seicha Suda, right? Again, Idmar. We're starting right by the two dots there on Mem Aleph and Beis. Idmar Hiviu Lufneim Te'enim Va'anovim B'Seicha Suda. Someone brings them before you figs and grapes. It's interesting that it says Tainim V'Anovim in that order when in the pasuk it's the opposite order. And it's Gefen Sein of a remind. So what's the halacha? Amar Avuna, Tu'unim bracha lefneim ve'en tu'unim bracha la'achareim. According to Ravuna, you have to make a bracha before you eat these grapes or figs, but you do not have to make a bracha afterwards. V'chein Amar Rav Nachman, Tu'unim bracha lefneim ve'en tu'unim bracha la'achareim. According to Rav Nachman as well, you have to make a bracha beforehand, before the dates, before the figs and grapes, but not afterwards. What does Rashi say? Says Rashi, they're bringing you figs and grapes during the meal. What does Rashi say? They're not coming to be like a relish for the bread. Because if they were coming just to make the bread, with like a grape dip or a fig dip, like to help eat the bread, so then it would be tuffle to the bread. And what's the halacha? The halacha is no one would argue that when you have an ikr and a tefillah, the halacha is mvarach on the ikr and the tefillah is pater. Dim can have a tefillah and a chalik b'dav shein ton bracha lo lefanav lo la'acharav. Then you wouldn't be required to make a blessing even before. Elafamim shebo lematek es piv b'tzei chasuda b'peres. It's coming to be matzog, to be sweet. Limtek as piv. It's coming to make your mouth sweeter during the meal with various pears. Look at the taitzvus here. This is a little differently. It's not coming to again be a relish for the bread. Right? It's coming for kinuach suda. What's kinuach suda? I never had it in my life till I was older, and I went to my wife actually to a restaurant in Eretz Yisrael, where we finished. I guess it was a fancy restaurant. We finished eating, and they offered us something called a palate cleanser. And I saw what's quinoa cleanser. Never had it before, but that was more like ices. I never understand why I had ices in the meal. No, that's quinoa suda. It's coming to take away the taste from the previous dish, whatever was the appetizer before the main. So they wanted to have quinoa suda. So according to Rashi, it's to be masuk, it's to be sweet. According to Rashi, it's to separate out the taste, I guess, from the prior course. In any event, what is we saying? Both Rav Huna and Rav Nachman agreeing that in the situation when they bring you various fruits during the meal, so are these fruits coming to help along the bread? No. Everyone agrees they're not. The lapis is a pass. So both Rav Huna and Rav Nachman agree that the halacha is they need a bracha beforehand. Right, as Rashi says, lilav tefillah. But they don't need a bracha afterwards. Why? The bracha is on Muslim Petros, and you don't have to make a bracha afterwards because you can rely on the regular benching. Continues the Gemara. We are now Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes Amar Tu'unim Bracha Bein Lifneim Bein Lacharim. Rav Sheshes says, sounds like, at least from reading this without Rashi, Tais, etc., it sounds like Rav Sheshes is disagreeing. Now, they're talking about the same exact case. They're bringing you figs, they're bringing you grapes in the middle of the meal. And Rav Sheshes is saying, Tu'unim Bracha Bein Lifneim Bein Lacharim. You have to make a bracha both before and afterwards. Why? Because there's no such thing that you make a bracha before it, that you don't make a bracha after it. In other words, since the Te'enim and Anavim are not coming lapis as a pass, they're not coming to help with the bread at all. They're coming, why? Either the matuk, to be sweet for the meal, or the kinuach sugam, like Taisvis. But either way, since you have to make a bracha before them because they're not coming to help along with the bread at all, not tuffle to the bread. So once you're making a bracha ahead of it, you have to make a bracha after it. That's what it sounds like from Rav Sheshes. Yes? It sounds like Rav Sheshes is just saying that once you have an idea that you're requiring a bracha before this, so then it should have a bracha afterwards. Says Rashi. Ben lifnei ben lachareim delay patar ela midi dezayin v'hani loy zayni. Rashi says that the berachas hamazon is coming to be pattering things that are midi dezayin, things that are there to satiate you, things that are there to fill you up. V'hani loy zayni. These are not there for that. These are there again for palate cleansing or for some sort of sweetness, but they're not there as something to fill you up. So therefore, it will not be sufficient to just say bracha samaz. You have to make a special bracha acharana for it. Now, is Rashi saying? In other words, when you read Rav Sheshes without Rashi, it sounds like what Rav Sheshes is saying is a law of brachas. Things that have a bracha beforehand need a bracha afterwards. Is it a law of berachas hamazon, or is it a law of brachas in terms of when you make a bracha on a food? From when I've just read Rav Sheshes without Rashi, I would have just said it's anything I made a bracha on beforehand, I have to make a bracha afterwards. That's a law of normal brachas. It's not a law having anything to do with berachas hamazon. When Rashi is saying bein lifnei bein lachreim, look at Rashi carefully. Rashi is saying bein lifnei bein lachreim delay potar elamidi designing the hani loy zayni, because it's not potar only things that are filling you up, but things that are not there to fill you up. That's not going to be potar from the berachas hamazon. Therefore, you have to make a special bracha acharayna for that. Which sounds like it's not a vort then in the beginning of the first bracha. If you begin the eating of the food with a bracha, then you have to end that eating with a bracha. The vort in, forget the normal halachas of brachas. Normally, I would have berachas hamazon come along and pater anything up that was eaten beforehand, but not this, because this doesn't come along from zun. Since it's not mina design, it doesn't get berachas hamazon to come and wipe away the slate clean. That's what it sounds like from Rashi, a little bit different than what I would have just thought had I read Rav Sheshes. I have to see a little bit more. Except, Rav Sheshes says one exception. What's the exception for Rav Sheshes? Again, Rav Sheshes Amar Tunim bracha ben lifnei ben lachareim. You always need a bracha afterwards if you needed a bracha beforehand. She'ein l'chol davar she'toam bracha lefanav ve'ein toam bracha la'acharav. There's no such thing that requires a bracha beforehand that doesn't require a bracha afterwards. Again, that's why I'm saying it doesn't seem like a vart per se in berachas hamazon, but a vart in brachas. If you started out with a bracha, you always need a bracha afterwards. The only exception is ela pas haba b'kisnin bilvad. The only exception is pas haba b'kisnin. What is pas haba b'kisnin? Not 100% sure. Other than to say it's sort of some sort of a dessert. We'll look at Rashi in a second. So for now, it's going to be some sort of a mezainistic dessert. Let's just leave it at that. So according to Rav Sheshes, there is one exception to the rule where something requires a bracha beforehand but doesn't require a bracha afterwards, and that is pas haba b'kisnin. If I was to ask you now again without saying anything more, what does that mean? It doesn't require a bracha afterwards. It doesn't require a bracha afterwards because benching is going to be working here, or is it doesn't require a bracha afterwards because no bracha is required at all? Maybe burn nefashos. It's not 100% clear. Or what is it? Maybe a situation that doesn't require any bracha afterwards, because maybe you don't usually eat any normal amount of the pas haba b'kisnin. Maybe you only eat a tiny amount. Maybe it needs a bracha lefnei, but not a bracha la'akareim. These are all possibilities that are discussed in the Rishonim. They're not 100% clear again from the words of Rav Sheshes. Well, we will come back to that in a few minutes. Okay, so. Let's just finish up before we get to our pub. We'll just do a Rav Chia. Pliga to Rav Chia. This is an argument of Sheshes. This is an argument of Rav Chia. The Amar Rav Chia pas pateres kol minei meichel, v'yayin pater kol minei mashkim. Rav Chia says no. Pas is pater any type of other food, and yayin is pater any other type of drink. Okay. So now let's try to go seriatim through this. There's Tesis on each thing and Tesis disagreeing with Rashi on each thing. Okay, so first we're going to do pas haba b'kisnin. All right, it's a very relevant halacha sugya. What is pas haba b'kisnin? Says Rashi. La'achar achila berachas hamazon. Rashi says that the case of pas haba b'kisnin that Rav Sheshes was talking about that needs a bracha beforehand, then afterwards, that means after benching. You already ate your meal and you benched. And now they bring you pas haba b'kisnin. Hayrigim lahavi kisnin vein kloyos. This is not kloyos with a kuf, right? Those are kidneys. These are kloyos with a kuf, right? These are the various nuts, etc. Right? The Rambam says You give kolayas to the kids on Yontif, it's part of the Simchas Yontif, etc. Right? The Vishayafin Lalev, like the Gemara says, they're good for the heart. I have no idea. Hani kisni the mal lalibo mavin iman pas shenalushem tavlin ke'ain something or other. So says Rashi that this pasabah b'kisnin is basically something that has nuts in it, and it's good for the heart, and it's cooked right with a bread shenalushem tavlin. Right, so it sounds like it's a kind of a dough that has nuts mixed inside it, and and you eat it. I don't know if anybody has ever had like nut cake or things like that. I know that for my birthday, my from the North Pole, my grandmother would always make me. She was from Czechoslovakia, and it was a big treat for me. She would make. I don't know what it's called. I wish I remembered. I don't remember anymore the name. But I remember when I did remember the name. I checked it. It was like a German name, German dessert that I think they still eat it now. But it was like basically like think about a rogalach, right? But it was rogalach. The whole thing was nuts. Like I don't mean nuts in a bad way. I'm saying the whole thing was made out of nuts. It was like pastry with nuts. It was very tasty. That's essentially what this is, right? It's a dough mixed with nuts. This is the pasabah v'kisnin. And look at Rashi. You rarely get to see what Rashi says about himself. What does Rashi say? Ke'ain, something or other. I can't pronounce it. Uvalayish. Maybe I'm saying that right. Shalanu, right? That we have in France that Rashi was eating. V'yesh she'oisin oisan kemin sipayrim v'ilanais. Those that make these raglach in the shape of some sort of birds or trees. V'oichlem mehen devar muat, and they eat only a tiny bit of it. And because they put in so much of this seasoning, or what I don't know, cinnamon or other kinds of things, they're very, very spicy and sharp. All these various nuts and almonds, and you only eat a tiny bit of it. They did not require you to make. They did not require you to make a bracha achrona. Why not? You don't have to make a bracha achrona of al michya. Why not? Because of the fact it's like you're eating the rice bread or things like that, or millet bread. I mean, we already said before that initially you make on it a mezainis, and afterwards you make only a bar nefashis. So in other words, it's coming out according to Rashi that the pasabah b'kistan is what's the situation? The situation is of the pasabah b'kistan is that it's not regular bread at all. It's a bread in the sense that it has dough, it has flour, but it's a ton of tavlin in it, and there's a lot of egoism and shkedim in it. So that's sort of, I think of it as a ragala, and it's not coming during the meal, it's coming after the meal, and you're eating only a small bit of it, and because you're eating a small bit of it, what's the halacha? You only have to make a bar nefashis. You don't have to make an al mechya. You make a mezainis and a bar nefashis, like pas iris, like pas deichen, right? This is Rashi Shita. Taisus is not going to go apoplectic about this. Why? Says Taisus, what's going on here? Let's look at Taisus. Ela pasna babikis. And it's on brachel fun of ain't on brachel acharav. Brakman nefashis. Media to have urge v'derchen. Again, like Rashi says, Damin el but chilin v'rakman min abzin some sef like klum hayel v'nosn ben shkedim harbe. Right, this is basically what Rashi explained. Per Rashi, feeling achamen achar brachas and bazin kamar. Rashi says that even after benching, right? Even after benching, we are on mem alpha and base. Mem alpha and base. The third, what do you call it? The fourth Taisus. Yeah. So Taisus can't be right. V'lo nehira. Says the Rashi cannot be correct. Why? We already said before that anything that comes from the what do you call the 5 types of grain, it requires you to make an alamichya. We're not saying here this is made out of rice. It's a dagan. It's a type of a grain, whatever, using flour, using wheat flour to make this kind of a rogala. So what do you mean you're making a bar nefashis? V'oi, Amaika Amar Kisnin. Why is it Rav Sheshes the big chiddush then calling this a pasabah b'kisnin? Chutz mizu, There's nothing in the whole world where you make a mezainis and then afterwards you don't have to make a bracha, meaning you're just going to make a bar nefashos. Why? What is this like unique thing about the kisnin? You don't have to go very far. We already discussed other situations where you make a mezainis before and you make a bar nefashos after. So why is this unique? Why is this a unique case? Al karchel circle farish the Meir b'soichas suda kaidem berchas hamazon says Tosfos. We must be discussing a situation not after the meal. Rav Sheshes is talking about during the meal, before you benched. Now what happened? Rav Sheshes is telling you that before you bench, there is a new halacha to learn here, which is if you have this kind of a pasaba b'kisnin that's going to come to you, you don't need to make a special bracha achrayna for it because berachas hamazon is going to work. But the patel berachas hamazon, if you love sheshes mishum da'avi davar muet, avo beloy seuda. But if there wasn't a meal, but of course, if there was no meal and you had this pasaba b'kisnin, you'd have to make ala mechia. That's why we don't talk about pasars v'daychen. Why? Because over there, you're not required to make a bracha of al michya afterwards. All you have to do is make a burn of fashis. So we have here a fundamental machlokes between Rashi and Tosfos. The what Rav Sheshes is saying. They could both agree that a pasaba b'kisnin is this kind of a dough made out of wheat flour that has a lot of nuts in it. The fundamental question is, what's Rav Sheshes talking about? Is Rav Sheshes talking about that it's coming to Seichas Suda or Achas Suda? According to Rashi, it's coming to Achas Suda. And the vart is that you make a bar nefashos on this. Even though it's coming from B'chamesh Min Dagan, you make a bar nefashos on it because you're only eating a davar muat from it. Brachot says, I don't understand why is that a possible of a kislan. Even Passover is a halacha like that. What's Rav Sheshes' big unbelievable thing about possible of a kislan? That should be unique. That says no. We're talking about a possible b'kissim which is coming b'seichas sud. It's coming as dessert. And what's the kind of a bracha you make on it? Mezainis, of course. But you don't make a bracha achrein on it. Why not? Because you have benching. It's going to pat you up. Elamai. But if it was after the meal, if there was no meal, you just happened to want to eat this kind of a ruggle, you have to make a regular alamechia. Assuming you ate enough of a portion, you have to make an alamechia. So according to the way the Tosfos wants to learn, was basically now coming out of machlokes between Rav Sheshes and Rav Huna and Rav Nachman, right? Which makes this much nicer in terms of reading the Gemara, because according to the way Rav Huna and Rav Nachman are learning, you're bringing you te'ein and vanav meseichas suda. So the halacha was according to Rav Huna and Rav Nachman, you need a bracha before me, you don't need a bracha afterwards. Why? Because the bench is going to pat you up. And why do you need a bracha beforehand? Because it's not coming from the meal. It's not coming lavas as a pas. It's coming separate, lamatuk or kinuach suda. So you make a bracha before, and you need to make a bracha before, but a bracha afterwards? You don't have to make a bracha afterwards. Once it came in as part of the meal, you make benching, and the benching is going to cover you on the figs and on the grapes. Because the figs and the grapes are not coming normally machmas suda. They're coming not lavas as the pas. They're coming only because they want to sweeten your mouth or to give you a palate cleanser. So that's why you have to make a separate bracha. And then Rav Sheshes is coming to disagree. Rav Sheshes is now coming to argue on Rav Huna and Rav Nachman. And Rav Sheshes is saying, no, everything that you needed a bracha on beforehand also needs a bracha afterwards. Everything, says Rav Sheshes, meaning on the grapes and on the figs. If you needed to make a bracha beforehand because it's not coming lavas as a pas, then you need to make a bracha afterwards. The only exception is this pasaba b'kisnin, according to Rav Sheshes. That's the only exception. But on the regular grapes or figs or on other types of fruit, etc., that will be coming in for the meal, not lavas as a pas, according to Rav Sheshes, you have to make a bracha afterwards. Again, Rashi has this knech about because it's not Zion, whatever, but fundamentally, Sheshes is disagreeing with Rav Huna of Nachman. Right? In other words, separate from the machlokes of what's a pas above a kisnin, there's the fundamental machlokes if you need a bracha afterwards, or you can rely on benching. Says Rav Nachman and Rav Huna, you can rely on benching. Says Rav Sheshes, you cannot rely on benching. So now Tosfos concludes, and Tosfos says we don't hold like Rav Sheshes. Why? We hold like Rav Huna of Nachman because it's a situation of a halacha of Yachid v'Rabim. We go like the Rabbim. So since Rav Huna of Nachman are two, and Rav Sheish is one. We are going to pass like them and not like him. Remember that because that's going to be critical in a couple of minutes. Okay, continues the Gemara. So we just said that the machlekes these opinions with Rav Chia. Because Rav Chia said that pas is pater kol minei meichel. Pas is partering up all the food that you're going to eat at the meal, and yain is pater all the drinks you're going to drink at the meal. Says Rashi, what does it mean? Pas pateras. Bein lifnei, bein lachrein. Pas, when you eat bread, when you make a bracha on maitzi and you have bread, it's partering up the brachas that are going to come beforehand. Afterwards, it's partering everything. You don't have to make another bracha rishayna on things that are coming else during the meal. Why? Because your bracha of maitzi on the bread is covering it. And yain is part of all the types of mashkin that you would drink. Let's look at Tosfos. Tosfos, we don't have any more Rashis on this. So Tosfos says, "V'yayin pater kol minei mashkin." What does it mean that we say wine is partering up all the drinks, all the things you would drink? V'lachar ma'iri b'yayin b'loy suda. Tosfos says you might think that this is talking about just wine without a suda. In other words, you have wine and then you have other things to drink. It's a wine taste. The bahadi pas typically the pater lay pas. Because if you had bread, they should just say that the bread is going to pater up everything. That filu yayin nami of the pater. And we're going to see in a few minutes that the Gemara is going to tell us that yayin should be pater if you're having bread, if you're having it during the meal. The bread should pater. You love time the kaver bracha. If not for the fact that it gets a special bracha for itself, pas should also cover wine. Ella says Taisus, Mari beloy seuda. Taisus says, we probably should say that we're talking about a situation of wine without a suda, but I feel hafi yain pater, and even so, wine is coming along and patering other drinks. Less hilchos lakavasei. We don't pass like this. Sharing be pass pateras and Allah say, because the idea that even pass is being pater, we're not passing like him. El kupsakra papa, I'm passing like our papa in a minute. We'll see. Then king gamehot to come yain pater. Less hilchos lakavasei. So when it comes to yain pater, maybe the Allah is not like him either. As we will see, that is not exactly the way we pass. We do pass on the yain is pater, but it is not really so relevant. Or maybe we should just do this just to show what I mean. Okay, so if we look in Shulchan Aruch, so Shulchan Aruch Kuf in Archaim Kuf Ayin Dal, yain shebeseich hasuda mevorach alav bar pei gefen. Right, if you had wine that came during the meal, you have to make a bar pei gefen on it, and the pas is not pater up on the wine. And then we say yain pater kol minei mashkin. That wine is patering up all other types of drinks, as the Ramah explains. The feeling bracha rishayna, even from the bracha that you would make as a bracha rishayna. Now, im kaval lishtos lefnei hamazayin. Now, if you were going to drink wine before the meal, ein tzarich levarach al yain shebeseich hamazon, then you don't have to make a bracha on the yain that comes during the meal. The yain shelfnei hamazon patrim, because the yain before the meal patered you up. V'chein yain shel kiddush pater yain shebeseich hamazon. And that's why we don't make a bracha on wine that comes during the meal. What kind of bracha do we make? But not enough to make a gefen on the wine. Why? Because the yain already from Kiddush potted up all the wine that would come afterwards. And anything that you would drink during the meal is sufficient with one bracha. If you're only literally going to plan on drinking this kos, then you change your mind to have something else, okay. But generally speaking, that's not something that occurs to a person. So what do we see again? As the Maisa halacha is not like what Taisus is saying. We do paskin that yain is particular minei mashkin, has practical implications in terms of the fact that when we are making kiddush, that is going to pat up all the wine that will be drunk later at the meal, and therefore we do not make another bracha on wine except for the bracha b'tov ha'metiv, which maybe we'll discuss in a few minutes. Okay. So far, so good. We have had now the opinions of Rav Huna of Nachman in relation to the fact that the things that are coming not lafes as a pas, they're coming as not a relish for the bread or a dip or thing like that. They're coming just fruit. Kinuach suda, palate cleanser, or to be some sort of davar masuk, which is going to sweeten your mouth. Then the opinion of Nachman and Rav Huna was that you make a bracha before, you don't make a bracha afterwards because it's benching. Rav Sheish disagrees. Rav Sheish says no, you make a bracha beforehand, because and afterwards, because there's nothing that you make a bracha before that you don't have to make a bracha after, except for pasal b'kisnin. We just said machlokes. What is pasal b'kisnin? According to Rashi, was talking about la'achar su'ud. Again, that will be the question then of why it's being brought up. Right? How's Rav Sheshes? Right? The Taisus is pointing out how's Rav Sheshes working out in the Gemara as a machlokes with Rav Huna and Rav Nachman if what he's talking about is la'achar su'ud. Right? If you want to have a solid machlokes with Rav Nachman and Rav Huna, you got to be talking about what they're talking about. Rav Nachman and Rav Huna are talking about a situation you make a bracha beforehand, but you don't make a bracha after because you put the brachas hamazon. So Rav Sheshes is talking about a situation where you make a bracha beforehand and you make a bracha after, and the one exception is pasal b'kisnin, which is you don't make a bracha. You always make a bracha afterwards because you don't rely on benching, according to Rav Sheshes. The one exception, pasal b'kisnin, where what you do rely on benching. That's presumably the way it should be working out. That's how Taisus wants to put it. I should say no. In which case, how is that an exception to the rule? How's Rav Sheshes then being a good sort of response to Rav Nachman and Rav Huna? They're not talking about the same case anymore. This is part of, again, Taisus' fundamental questions on Rashi and why he changes it up. Okay. Then we discussed the opinion of Rav Chia. Rav Chia said that passes poiter as kol minei maifel. That means, according to what Rav Chia wants to say, you never make a bracha on anything that comes during the meal, because your pas already patted it. I don't care that it's a fig or a date and it's coming as a relish, not coming as a relish. It's irrelevant. Pas is pater kol minei meichel. So according to Rav Chia, why are you asking me to make a bracha on it? There's no bracha. No bracha on anything if it doesn't come, if it's coming during a meal that had bread. Once I had the bread, it's pattering everything. So again, we have, in a sense, a three-way machlokes here, right? We have Rav Huna, Rav Nachman, Rav Sheshes, and Rav Chia. According to Rav Huna, Rav Nachman, you make a bracha on things that don't come as part of the meal. You have to make a bracha rishayna. You don't have to make a bracha achrona. According to Rav Sheshes, you have to make a bracha rishayna, and you have to make a bracha achrona. Again, with the exception of pasal b'kisnin. And then you have Rav Chia. What does Rav Chia say? You have to, once you make a bracha on bread, you never have to make a bracha beforehand. Obviously, you don't have to make a bracha afterwards. Good? Those are three fundamental differing opinions. And now the Gemara concludes that what's as the halacha? Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Papa, Hilchasa, what is the halacha? Devarim haboyim machmas hasuda b'seich hasuda. The halacha is that anything that is coming machmas hasuda, in other words, any food that's coming because of the meal, we're going to have to see what that means. What does machmas hasuda mean? But any food that's coming because of the meal, b'seich hasuda, ein te'unim bracha lo lefnei v'lo lachem, doesn't require bracha before or afterwards. Mishaloi machmas hasuda, but a food is coming not because of the meal, b'seich hasuda, it's coming during the meal, but not because of the meal. Then tu'unim bracha lefnei, ain't tu'unim bracha lachem. Then it would require bracha before him, but it doesn't require bracha afterwards. Le'achar seuda, what does it mean when it comes after the seuda? Each one of these things is going to be debated. If it comes after the meal, tu'unim bracha, bein lefnei, bein lachem. Then it requires a bracha both beforehand and afterwards. Okay, says Rashi, what are the cases that we're discussing? Says the first case, the Rav Papa is the Varim Habar Machmas Seuda. Says Rashi, Lapis Ben Asapas is coming as a relish for the bread. So the halacha then is the situation when something's coming to add to the Seuda, it's coming Lapis Asapas. So then ain't doing a bracha. It doesn't require a bracha. The Avil Tfela. Right? It's a tafel. It's coming Lapis Asapas. So then it's a tafel. We know that anything with the ikra and a tafel, you make a bracha on the ikra, it's part of the tafel. Look at komidi ben mazim ben perish avilu lafton, and by bracha lo lefan of lo la'achrav. So it's partially according to Rashi that this is the case, not like the case of Rav Nachman and Rav Huna, right? It's not an argument, it's a different case. This is coming lavis ben as a pas, right? They were discussing the case where it's not lavis as a pas. When it is lavis as a pas, what's the halacha? It's no bracha, not before and not afterwards. Good? That's the first case. Second case, Shaloi machmas hasuda b'seich hasuda, says Rashi, going daisav chayin kurva tardin she'ein lifton u'boyu l'mazin l'seveh. Says Rashi, these things are not coming, not like the first case. These are not coming lapis as a pas. They're coming l'mazin l'seveh. They're separate. These are coming of its own. So according to Rashi, the second case that we're discussing is they're boin shaloi machmas hasuda b'seich hasuda. What's the halacha on these things? You have to make a bracha. Lifnan. Why do you have to make a bracha lifnan? Lav tefelaninu. Lifnanim b'chlal lechem. The niftar brachas hamaitzi. They're not coming to be enhancing the bread. They're not coming because of the bread. They're not coming because of the seuda. They're coming shaloi machmas hasuda, but they're coming b'soich hasuda. So what does it require? Bracha lifnan, but not lachreim. Deminim mazininu. Well, berachas hamazon poitrasin, but it's a type of mazon, so berachas hamazon will work on it. Remember Rashi said before. When the Rashi bein lifnei bein lachmeim, now you see it, right? Because Rashi over there said the loy potter el media design. The only thing Berachas Hamazon works on is media design. Behind me loy zayni. Rashi's giving the same thing over here. Why does benching work? The mine mazon inu. Berachas Hamazon petrasan. Berachas Hamazon is coming for media design. So now that we've taken care of two of the cases of Rav Papa. What's the third case of Rav Papa? Devarim regilim lava achas. So we don't notice Rashi has a different gears here a bit than what we have. These are things that are ragil lavel achasuda. So it sounds like the Rav Papa is saying that these are things that are coming after the meal. You already benched; it's over the meal, and then you require brachos name brachal acharem. And you might ask, well, what is the chiddush of Rav Papa? Now look at Rashi's gear. Said devarim haragil lavel achasuda kegoin peris afilu heviam b'seichasuda. In other words, what we're talking about is things that are normally to come after the meal. The meal's already over. You benched; everything's finished. But now you're bringing them b'soicha suda shaloi machmas lifton. So you're bringing payers here. They're not relish. They're not here for the suda. They're not here to enhance the bread. But they're not midday design. It's not like the trade, and it's not like the daisa. It's not like these other things that we've had, the beets and the cabbage, and the kind of dough that you made with the honey and the nuts that we had before. Right? It's not those cases. These are the payers. Which case? This is the first case. Right, this is the first case. This is the case of Nachman Rav Huna. So in that situation, what happens? You need a bracha before and afterwards. Why? The lav tefillin. It's not a tafel to any bread, and it needs a bracha afterwards. The lav means third time on the same page that we have Rashi saying why berachas hamazon doesn't work on it. It's not media design. Good. So according to the way Rashi learns, we'll see Taisa disagrees vehemently on every point. But according to the way Rashi is learning, yeah, Rav Papa has three cases. One is Devarim Haboim Machmas Hasuda, B'Soich Hasuda. Second is Devarim Haboim B'Soich Hasuda, Shaloi Machmas Hasuda. And the third is Devarim Haboim La'ach Hasuda. That La'ach Hasuda, we're extrapolating it, or Rashi's Girsa is, what we're talking about is B'Soich Hasuda. So the first case is Devarim Haboim Machmas Hasuda, B'Soich Hasuda. That's coming lafes. That's coming to be a relish. So 100%, no question, right? That is 100% no question. That's a situation of effectively, Iker Tafel, no, nothing to discuss. Second was a situation of Haboim B'Soich Hasuda, but Shaloi Machmas Hasuda. That's the situations of Kruv Daisa trading, right? Which is Mamish Mina design, but it's not the lafes is a pass. Make a bracha today, but not a bracha lachavim. Berachas abazah patras. Third case is the varim haboim. Again, achar suda, the way our gear says, but it's fundamentally talking about b'soich hasuda. So the varim haboim b'soich hasuda, but it's not machmas hasuda, and it's not Zion. It's what Paris. So then the halachas you make a bracha before and afterwards. Good, which would be like what? Like whose opinion? Rav Sheshes' opinion, right? It wouldn't go with Rav Nachman and Rav Huna. This is like opinion of Rav Sheshes. Correct? Okay. Now let's look at Taisus. We have to no time. We have to hurry up. Taisus. What are we talking about? The first case is Devar Rabban B'Sei Chasuda Machmas Hasuda. Rashi says that's the lafis. That's the relish one. Belena here says that can't be right. Dim came as nixony. What I need this word of Rav Papa to tell me that in a situation of the Bar Mabam Machmas Hasuda B'Soich Hasuda that the halach is you don't have to make a bracha because Iker in a tafel and Baruch Iker in a Baruch tafel. So says one here, came as nisan. It's a pasha mission where you're going to have it. The Baruch Iker Baruch that's fair. My kamashma, my kash the Baruch B'Soimach. We're going to ask later on Yamin Amin the pass. We're going to ask the Yan should also be potted up with pass. My kasha. What's the question about like kisha soisa my yain and it's fail with pass? When you're drinking wine, it's not tough to the pas. I'm immediately tough to pass marinan. The ain't the parish the Persian going to giant and nifter the pass is sure Peter Bieno. And after my situation where you're soaking the bread and the wine, That would be a situation of yain tafel. That would be easy. That wouldn't be that isn't the situation of the Gemara stomach. But another question on Rashi. Rashi says that what does it mean? The second case of Devarim Abayim Shaloi Machmas Asuda B'Soich Hasuda. Rashi said that's the case of the Daisa Trading and the Kruv. Right? Says that can't be correct either. V'loin Hira Darminu B'Masnizin Barak Ala Pas. Pater Sapar Paris. We say in the Mishnah, it's going to say when you make a bracha on the bread, it's pater the other things. The Parparis is pater. So I know this already from Mishnah. So I don't need Rashi to tell me, or a Papa, the Rashi's learned to tell me these cases. Or we can more do I didn't call Maisik Dera. Any Maisik Dera is going to be pater from when you make a hamaitzi on bread. Or Dvarma Regilim Lava Lacha Suda Perish Rashi. How does Rashi understand the third case that the things are coming after the Rashi says that's Paris. That's the case of Rav Huna Rav Nachman. But if you label some circus, should make myself into an umbrella, and then love failing in Uvain Lachram, then Burks, some Muslim, but doesn't love is Zainu, the Heidecker of Sheshes. Says this third case is the case literally of Sheshes and Rav Huna Rav Nachman. The Amal Elavila fun of Tanabri, but himself that's a bit of a different gear. So Tanabri Manim is supposed to Tan and Vigef, whatever. But circus is the two in Brock, but if they Melacham, but how did Loy Kelkasa? This can't be the halacha. This is against the halacha. The Kamak Rav Nachman Rav Huna to the Bishalel, because we passed like Rav Huna Rav Nachman, like I already explained before. No, I'm bothered by this line of Taisus. Why did Taisus say they were passing like Rav Huna Rav Nachman before? Was said Rav Huna Rav Nachman versus Rav Sheshes, Yaakov Rab, Malach Rab. What? So say Rav Sheshes is arguing, and who's on his side? Rav Papa's on his side. So then it's a Ram Rab. It's a circular thing. So I don't understand this part of the line of Taisus. Fine, but forget that line. Aside from that, it's coming out. Taisus is asking a few fundamental questions already on Rashi. Because of this, Taisa has to come up with a new pshat to explain what Rav Papa is saying. It's not saying the three cases of Rav Papa are not the way Rashi understands. Says Taisa, what is the Pirush of the read? Al Kain Pirush read. What does that mean? Things that are coming to, I don't have the time all around. We didn't get to Membes yet. Yeah. So the Re says that what does it mean? The Kloimer says the Re Harigidim Love Machmas Hasuda Bepas. The things that are rugged to come during the meal, they are rugged to come machmas asuda when you're eating bread. So in a suda you're having bread, these are normal things to come during that time. Meaning any normal thing that comes on a meal. Right? You have a first course, you have soup. You read in Shulchan Aruch, we don't have time now. You read Shulchan Aruch, any normal thing that you have during the meal, the way we have, you have a first course, a second course, a 15th course, whatever it is. But these are normal, the way your Shabbos meal is. That's considered bar machmas ha'seuda. Not like Rashi. According to Rashi, what does machmas ha'seuda mean? According to the way Rashi wanted to learn it, it's a lafis ben as a pas. No, it's any ma'asikidera, any soup and fish, gefilte fish, salmon and meat and whatever, all the dishes that you have in a normal Shabbos meal, that would be machmas ha'seuda. And you don't make a bracha on any of that. All that's pater because of the pas. But notice Taisus' language. Taisus' language is kolayma haragilim love machmas hasuda bepas. It comes in a suda with bread. Sheragilim laachlat nima pas. That it's normal to eat it with bread. Now, my father's a big machmer. I've never really seen people eating the meat like in the main course with bread. My father's not doing it. I don't think because of what's on Shulchan Aruch, but that's how he eats it. Most people I don't know that they're eating bread with the meat in order to be able to eat it down. Right? They can eat the meat plain, right? But the Taisus' language is that you're eating with the bread. You go in Boston, there. You don't need any bracha before and after. And then, therefore, because of the fact that normally it's eaten with bread, even if you eat it without bread, the because it's being brought because of bread, the pas is going to pater you up. But things that are not the normal derech to eat it during the meal, going tomorrow, the things that are being brought like various fruits that are not normal ruggle to eat them with the bread, they need a bracha beforehand. The kevin mishum lift on since they're not there as a relish. Ain't a pas patros, and the bread is not going to pass them. So you are talking about a situation, let's say on Rosh Hashanah, right, where you have somebody's eating a fruit during the meal. You make so why? It's not coming back as the meal. Most people don't have fruits during a meal. So therefore, since that's not coming as a meal and it's not coming lavas the pas, it's not coming as a relish for the bread, therefore you have to make a bracha rishana. But of course, you would not have to make a bracha because that the benching would patch you up behind Rav Nachman and Rav Huna. That is exactly what Rav Nachman and Rav Huna say, and that is in fact the second case of Rav Papa. All right, we have to come back to the text. Maybe come back tomorrow. I just have to get a little bit to mem base. So the Gemara says like this: Sholos ben Zayim, they asked ben Zayim, Mipnei Ma'am, Dvar Bar Machmas Hasuda, B'Zay Chasuda, and Tunum Bracha. They asked ben Zayim, why is it that things that are Bar Machmas Hasuda, B'Zay Chasuda, that they don't need a bracha? Lo'lef Neim, Lo'lef Achareim. Things that are coming during the meal because of the meal, they don't require a bracha, not before and not afterwards. Again, we're going to go with the Pshat of Tes, which is the Pshat of Halacha for us, which is anything that comes during the meal and it's normally coming during the meal, that's eaten with bread, you don't have to make a bracha before and thereafter. So he said, as them explain, because the bread is pattering you up. So it says the Gemara, so why don't we say that any wine that comes during the meal should also be pater because of the pas? Again, we're not talking about a situation with kiddush, because kiddush is in fact not be pater. But if you didn't have kiddush, you're just having a meal in a restaurant, and then they give you wine. You have wine during the meal. Why do you say what you have to make? Why do you have to make a geffen on that wine? Why can't you just say the bread is patering it up? Says the Gemara, shiny yain, the germ brachal atzma. Yain is such a chashiv thing that it's germ its own bracha for itself. It's germ its own bracha for itself. So now the Gemara has a quick story. So Rav Huna achal tlesa rifti b'nei tlasa b'kava. So Rav Huna ate 13 different kinds of breads. Each one was like a kav of flour. He had 3 breads from it, meaning it was a large amount. He didn't what do you call it? He didn't bench. So he didn't bench, and it was bothersome to Rav Nachman. Right? Even though they agreed on my mouth on base here, Rav Nachman challenges him. I'm Rav Nachman. Ade kafna. He says you're eating this. The Rashi explains because you're hungry. Right? You're eating a large amount. Right? What is this kind of bread? Place of rifti in it. Rashi says that it's a pasa baba kisnin. It's this kind of the ragla that we mentioned before. He's eating a large amount of it, and he says you're eating such a huge amount. Why don't you bench? You have to bench. Whatever people normally be kaveh suda on it, you have to bench. Don't say that. Oh, I'm not full. And it says you have to. Rashi brings down. We don't have a chance to do the Rashi, but if you remember the Gemara earlier, Chafam Beis, the Gemara said that the Jewish people, Hashem says, I shouldn't be yisapanim. I shouldn't give the Jewish people a favor, but they're makbid on making a bracha, even on a kizayas kibeh. They're mamash so machmer on themselves that they're always seeking out the mitzvahs and brachas. So I shouldn't be. So Rashi says, how could it be that Rav Huna doesn't understand this? He didn't hold of this. So Rashi tries to come up with a bit of a different shot to explain what exactly was this story. But it sounds like on its face that Rav Huna was eating a large amount, not benching, and he was challenged by Rav Nachman, says that you don't make a decision of achal savat v'rachta just on the basis of if you feel full or not, but rather whatever acherim, whatever general populace would make a suda on it of that size, that would be considered enough to have to bench. So it continues the Gemara. Rav Yehuda have an asik leila brei Rav Huda bar Chaviva. Rav Yehuda was making a chasana for his son by the house of Rav Yehuda bar Chaviva. So I said the kaime baza baba kisnen. They brought him a pasta baba kisnen. He also, when it came, shaminu the kamavarche hamoitzi. He heard that they were making hamoitzi on the pasta baba kisnen. Amar lahu my titi the kashamana. What's this titi, right? Hamoitzi. What are you guys doing? Dilma hamoitzi. Like it's kamavarchis too. Maybe you made hamoitzi. Amar lahim. They said, yeah, we made hamoitzi. The Tanya was ever brisa. Rav Maina Amar. Rav Maina. We only have 3 times in Shas. Here is one of the 3 times. One of the places in Megillah, by the way. Megillah. Rav Maina also is talking, and he says that if you read the Megillah, and we get a chance to mention something about the Purim, right? That if you made you were laning the Megillah and then you stopped. So if you stop for a long enough time, you have to go back. Yeah. So that the Ramayana says this, in fact, as a halacha, Amar Yehuda, Amar Mishum Rav Yehuda, pasaba b'kisn v'rachla ha'maitzi. He says a pasaba b'kisn, you have to make ha'maitzi. Amar Shmuel halacha Rav Mayna, and Rav Shmuel says halacha is like Rav Mayna. Amar Lahu. So Rav Yehuda responds and said, this is like while he's making the chasana for his son, right? This is how he responds. So Amar Lahu, and halacha Rav Mayna. No, the halacha is not like Rav Mayna. Amri le v'hamar hu the Amar Shmei the Shmuel lachmanias ma'arvin bohen. But they asked Rav Yehuda, don't you say in the name of Shmuel that lachmania, right? This Rashi says ovelish, which is the same that he says the pas hababakist. In other words, it's the same case that you say ma'arvin bohen. You're allowed to make an erev on him, and you're allowed to make a berachas hamaitzi on it. So what does he answer? Shiny hasam the kavas sudasu alayu. When you make hamaitzis, if you're being kaveh sud on something, but if you're not being kaveh sud on something, you don't make hamaitzis. We're going to have to discuss some more of this tomorrow. All right,